What is going on, guys? I have not been live for a while, but thank you so much for joining me for this video. I have decided today I am going to head out and go check out the Iron Claw movie. I have about 15 minutes to get to the theater, which is about, I don't know, 20 minutes away from my house. I am super late. My tickets are already bought, but I'm looking forward to doing a full review of this movie when I get out. So come with me and watch the Iron Claw. All right, so I'm super late. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna miss the start of the movie. The weather's miserable, but hopefully we can get a good shot of it and not miss too much. Alright, so I found out the movie actually starts 10 minutes later, so I should be okay. I don't know, we'll see. We're gonna, hopefully this movie is not too full, because I want to see if I can record a little bit, but yeah, there we go.
Many hours later.
So, just got outside the Iron Claw. Sorry about the audio, my microphone is dead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a quick recap of what I thought, and then I'll do an overview later on in this video. But first impressions, if you are a pro wrestling fan and you know your history of pro wrestling, and you know about the Von Erichs, you know about Legacy and the growth of WCCW, NWA, Jerry Jarrett, like, this is a movie you have to see. It is worth every cent and every minute of sitting in a theater. But overall, I can say the reviews that I saw from the New York Times and that kind of stuff saying that it was too sad, it was too slow, it was too dry. If you're a pro wrestling fan, you completely understand it, but I'll do a complete review of it later. But just for now, damn.
So as I mentioned just then, I had to decompress and really sit down and think about the movie. Like, I'm not one of those people that can do a straight review. But first off, what I referenced there in the last video was a New York Times post. It was actually Vanity Fair. And here is the start of the article. I will put the link of the article in the description below so you guys can go read the entire thing. But just here, if you want to pause the video now, you can read the first little bit of it and how like one-sided some of these reports have been about the Iron Claw. And I really believe that some of these are just coming from people that are expecting a happy-go-lucky wrestling movie instead of what the family tragedy of the Von Erichs actually was. So I think that article is extremely unfair. It's an extremely one-sided opinion, and a lot of other articles that I have been reading about the Iron Claw movie have been horribly misleading towards what the movie actually is. If you are a wrestling fan, this is why you are on my channel. So I'm not going to give you the entire historical basis of this movie. I'm going to tell you what I felt about the movie as a wrestling fan, how they depicted professional wrestling and how they depicted the Von Erichs. First off, I'm just going to say the only flaw in this movie for me was the person that played Ric Flair. I'm pretty sure there are wrestling fans with no acting experience that could do an entire Ric Flair monologue or promo with their eyes closed, sounding way more like Ric Flair. I honestly did not see any resemblance to Ric Flair in this character. It is the only gripe I have with this entire movie, is that whoever did the casting for the movie majorly slipped up on one of the most iconic characters, and maybe that was because they didn't want to draw too much attention to Ric Flair. I didn't even realize Chavo Guerrero played the Iron Sheik until I went over the casting list, and I think that was a sentiment to the movie where it wasn't drawing to the other characters like the Harley Races, the Jerry Jarretts, obviously the Iron Sheik. I didn't even realize that MJF played Lance Von Erich. Okay, I just didn't really catch that until at the end. I knew MJF was in the movie. Personally, I thought he was Ric Flair when I saw the little bits of it. But no, apparently it was Eisenberg, was not a fan of how he depicted Ric Flair, and that's the only negative I have about the entire movie. But for the rest of the cast, I think every person played their characters perfectly. Zac Efron played Kevin Von Erich to a T. He was emotional. He was strong. You really saw the heartbreak throughout the movie as his character starts to like break more and more and more and more. And there was a scene actually near the end of the movie where Kevin Von Erich is wrestling Ric Flair, and at the end of the match, they're seen in the locker room where Fitz Von Erich and Kerry Von Erich are both just staring at Kevin, and Ric Flair walks in and basically says he's going to give Kevin another title shot anytime he wants, and then asks him to go out on the town and get drunk, get boozed up. And both Kerry and Fritz just stare at him, shaking their head like, what are you doing? Like, where are you mentally? And it was one of those ones where you're like, wow, like the two different sides and this man being torn apart in his own head with the loss of his brothers. It was really well done. It's a sad movie. First off, guys, don't expect to go in and see a happy-go-lucky wrestling movie, because this is a sad movie. And when it comes to professional wrestling, I know we're all fans of The Escape, but sometimes you have to have that full emotion to it, and the Iron Claw really depicts all the emotions of professional wrestling for the fans and professional wrestling for the talent, the wrestlers, the managers, the agents, everything in between. I think wherever you are in professional wrestling, if you are the world champion or you are a first-time viewer, every bit of professional wrestling is depicted in the Iron Claw, and I love it. I love the little references to other characters that, you know, they couldn't really mention. I just thought this was done perfectly. Now let's go to the big emphasis on this movie, professional wrestling. Chavo Guerrero did an amazing job getting these talent ready to be in the ring. I thought it was one of the most realistic wrestling movies or shows that I have ever seen. Like, you go and watch other wrestling movies and you see big superstars from professional wrestling in these movies performing, but this is like the first wrestling movie that you don't have a full wrestling cast involved. Yes, you have MJF, yes, you have Chavo Guerrero, and I believe Dolph Ziggler's brother Ryan Nemeth is in there as well. But when you look at the entire movie, you have a cast of Hollywood superstars depicting professional wrestlers, and depicting professional wrestlers from a time in professional wrestling where it wasn't about the high-flying showmanship like our Seth Rollins, our Shawn Michaels, etc., etc. You have the brute strength of the Von Erichs from North Texas, where it's not about being flashy, it's about being firm. And I love that they were able to depict that perfectly. So it was really easy to see what professional wrestling was before Vince McMahon tore apart the NWA territories, basically, and what they were depicting down in WCCW, what they were doing in St. Louis, what they were doing in Midwest, what they were doing even up in Toronto in Maple Leaf, up until like the late 80s. This was where I loved the history that they were able to show. I really love that when you got to see everything about the Von Erichs outside of the family basis, it was about the history of wrestling and how this family came up and kind of how the territories worked. It was a lot of time on the road, not like what it is today, but it was a lot of time on the road traveling from territory to territory. And they really got to show that in the simplest way, and I love that they were able to really give the outside viewer who doesn't know about professional wrestling almost like that open eye, like, wow, these wrestlers are on the road so much, tearing apart their bodies. I personally was a fan that they did dive into the alcohol and the drug addiction of professional wrestling that we did see in the late 70s, the 80s, and definitely the early 90s, and we were given that open mindset that it's not a glorified sport. Like, these guys are punishing their bodies. And there was the simplest thing where Kevin was on his first date with Pam and she goes, "It's all fake, right?" And every professional wrestling fan and any professional wrestler will be an advocate and get away from the F word, because the F word is one of those words that we all hate, because there is nothing fake about professional wrestling. Yes, is it predetermined? We understand that, but there is nothing fake about what these wrestlers do 250 plus days a year, where they're slamming their bodies on the mat, and it's not to a comfy mat like it was, or like it is now. Back then they were going on a mat about this thick. So I really enjoyed that they also were able to get rid of a lot of stigma in professional wrestling. Overall, this movie was a must watch. Was it sad? Again, I think I've emphasized this a few times. Yes, this movie was extremely sad. If you didn't tear up in this movie, I feel that you didn't get the concept of what they were trying to portray. So I found this movie to be absolutely incredible. It is first off, this movie is a homage to professional wrestling, for one. Two, is an incredible way to tell the story of the Von Erichs and honoring the Von Erichs as well. I think the one thing we need to remember is, yes, this family went through trials and tribulations. They didn't show all of the tragedy. They stuck with the core four brothers. They did miss out on the oldest brother, and I believe the youngest brother as well. They did just stick with the core four, and I think that's the best way they should have done it, because the tragedies didn't need to be depicted any further. There were some timeline issues I will pick apart, but I don't really think that we need to go that far into picking the story and the script apart. I think talking about the actual movie itself and what they're trying to depict for professional wrestling is good enough. I don't know. If you guys watched the movie, let me know in the comments how you felt about it. But I truly believe that this was one of the best wrestling made movies. I'm really impressed with A24, and if this is what this studio is going to be producing, I will be a big fan for a long time, and I look forward to hopefully seeing more professional wrestling movies from this studio. I think they did a phenomenal job. I think this is one of the best depictions of wrestling since the TV show Heels. Unfortunately, that got canceled. Hopefully it gets picked up from a different studio, but the wrestling, the storytelling, the script itself, yeah, okay, you could pick a few things apart, but overall, absolutely fantastic. Like I said, the only gripe with it was the Ric Flair depiction. I don't think they hit the nail on the head with that. I think it was extremely poor, but I am going to end this on a very positive note. This movie gets like a 4.5 out of 5, and hopefully we see more from A24. Guys, what did you think of the Von Erichs movie? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and put the bell on for all notifications that are the wrestling channel. I've got a few more videos coming out in the next week, and I will see you guys in 2024.